8 races to go this season, and here on the shores of the Caspian Sea, it's time for the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. And with less than 40 points separating the top 3 constructors and 6 different winners in the last 7 races, it is very much game on. We're set here in beautiful Baku for another very hot weekend. The wind likely to play a huge factor here as the race for both the drivers and the constructor titles rumbles on. Welcome down to a very warm pit lane, and alongside me, Alex Brundle, a man who has stood on the podium of Le Mans, no less. And here we are in Baku. I like this city. I love this race.
What a racetrack. You know, some places, this place is 6 lanes wide, some of the highest speeds that we ever see in a Formula One car. Others, it's one at a time. A tight and twisty street circuit in certain sections, a really, really technical and tricky track.
I think it says a lot that we've had 6 different winners in 7 races this season, but also here in Baku as well. And as you mentioned, that castle section, 7.6 metres wide. It's the narrowest corner of any on the racetracks here in the 2024 calendar. Sergio Perez is our only repeat winner. How important a weekend is this here in Baku for him?
Really important weekend for Perez. He's still got a question mark over his head, loves this place. Could be a difficult weekend for Red Bull in general. He's been more equal with his teammate Max Verstappen, so to keep himself in that seat, he really needs to try and convert this into a decent result.
Interestingly, Perez saying that he feels Max Verstappen is now suffering the same sort of issues that he's been feeling in the car for the past 10 races. Just take us into the cockpit there. What can he mean by that?
Well, there's an element of vindication, isn't there, in that, where he feels suddenly that his teammate is making all of the same noises as him. As a driver, you try not to go, I told you so, I'm having difficulties as well, and try and be forward moving. But for him, it will be reassuring and will feed into the potential for a more equal result with Verstappen this weekend, which is what he needs to have at this stage of the year. It's a really strong venue for him, though, so it should be all good.
And of course, the big news, indeed perhaps the biggest of the season, the biggest in years so far, is that Adrian Newey, one of the most sought after signatures in this sport, has decided on his future, and that is with Aston Martin. Your reaction to that news breaking just Tuesday gone?
You know, initially I thought he would take the Ferrari offer. I really did when I first saw that he was leaving Red Bull, but it makes sense for so many reasons. Those ownership stake deals are not only trendy at the moment in terms of the deals that are being done in Formula One, but also you're dealing with some of the most profitable Formula One teams we've ever seen. So that could be massively lucrative. Not a bad salary either. And we've also seen that he loves the vibe of the team. And when I saw him sitting in your expertly hosted an announcement early on in the week, him and Lawrence Stroll sitting together just looked right. That careful, cautious, measured way of going about the announcement that they made, it appeared to click, and you can see why it works.
And that wasn't just on stage either. You could see that in all of the interactions that they had around the campus. It was an incredible event on Tuesday. Lawrence Barretta was also there. He sat down with Adrian Newey to talk through some of the reasons why he has joined Aston Martin.
Lawrence's commitment is very endearing and very obvious. It just feels like he's more than happy to put all his chips on black and give it everything, and that's very admirable.
And just finally, you get to work with Fernando Alonso. I think I've read a few interviews where you said it'd be quite cool to get to work with him. Was that a big pull as well? Yeah,
I mean, I've made no secret of the fact that 2 drivers I would love to work with that never have done was Fernando and, of course, Lewis. I couldn't do both, so I had to make that decision. But the package that, not the financial package, but the package that Lawrence was offering in terms of, I say, all his commitment, his enthusiasm, his passion, the chance to be a partner, that became very persuasive.
Awesome, Adrian. Well, thank you very much for your time and good luck with the whole project.
Thank you.
Adrian Newey then, managing technical partner, incoming, a future shareholder with the team as well. And when you look at his career so far, 220 wins in Formula One are in an Adrian Newey designed car. That is nearly 20% of all Formula One victories in history. 25 world titles. Fitting, I think, therefore, that he had a launch we normally see for a huge driver announcement or a livery reveal at the start of a season.
Yeah, what's impressive about that is he's across 3 teams as well. He's delivered those results. What they've got to do now is brace for impact, because when somebody comes in of the level of technical expertise that Adrian Newey has, he immediately starts asking for the impossible. That's how he does what he does. And if you are able to deliver those things as the team, you will get the result. But he's not going to wave a magic wand over the car. The rest of the team now are going to have to be prepared to absorb that and deliver the things that Newey needs to actually put all of those ideas on the racetrack. So they've got to be right on it now to make sure they convert him into results.
He'll be starting with Aston Martin 1st of March 2025. I'm sure there'll be a few changes by the 2nd of March 2025. And of course, that's with a view of the 2026 car, the new regulations coming in then as well. I've no doubt will have an impact on the 25 car and how that will be developed through that season. We look back at his career from Leighton House on to Williams, to McLaren, and then to Red Bull, and the extraordinary things that he has achieved throughout that time, but most recently at Red Bull in creating that car last year, which won 23 of 24 races.
You know, the thread that runs through his career as a designer is having an open mind to the possibility. The early KERS systems and the management of the weight distribution of those cars. He is excited about trying the theoretically unreachable in terms of race car design, and that's what I think sets him apart. He's also moving into a group of people there, some of whom he's worked with before, so it's not entirely alien an environment for him. I'm really excited what he can do in this set, but especially the next set of regulations that's going to come in 2026.
And Aston Martin really keen to emphasise as well that he is going to slot in seamlessly with the likes of Andy Cowell, of Dan Fallows, Luca Fabato, Erin Blanton, guys who are already in there and in the mix in Aston Martin, and he's one of that technical team. And of course, they now have an incredible resource available to them in that AMR campus as well. McLaren have benefited from their own wind tunnel. Aston Martin will now have the same. And Adrian Newey saying that was a key reason why he was on board. What a facility that is.
I found it interesting how he referred to that facility as creatively open, though. Not just halls and halls full of, equipment and wind tunnels. He wanted a creative space. It was a big factor for him. And it's going to be great to see what he can do. Much will rest on the ability of the Honda power unit that's going to come into that Aston Martin in 2026. It's going to be an engine formula. So Adrian Newey will be packaging that and trying to get the most out of that. And I think this partnership will hinge on that.
It's going to be fascinating to see how it rolls out. He's working with who he once referred to as his arch nemesis, his arch enemy, Fernando Alonso, both legends of the sport, now working together. We'll keep an eye on 2025 and all that's to come. For now, as we enter our final race of the European season, look ahead to the flyaways, the remaining 7 races after this one. We'll take a look back at Monza. What a race weekend that was.
This is Monza, one of the great arenas in motor racing. It's McLaren, front row lockout, and the Italian Grand Prix is underway. Lando Norris got the launch that he needs. Russell goes onto the grass as the McLarens are side by side, and Oscar Piastri with a bold and brilliant move to take the lead, and he's lost second place to Charles Leclerc.
Racy, aggressive, not much room for him.
Oscar Piastri in the pits, so it is a 2-stopper. Charles Leclerc takes the lead.
We are thinking plan B, stay out.
Have they opened the door for Ferrari?
This is masterful from Leclerc.
Why did McLaren pit Piastri? They have thrown it away.
The Tifosi are roaring him home. Charles Leclerc is the winner. The man from Monaco is the man for Monza.
I love that line from Alex Jakes. The emotion of Charles Leclerc's race radio in that final lap, the emotion of Alex Jakes in the commentary box. It seems when Charles Leclerc has a win, it's got to be a big one. It's got to be an emotional one. It's got to make half the nation cry.
It brings something out of Alex Jakes, doesn't it? He turns into an Uber commentator for a couple of moments.
He goes level 11 at that point.
He really does, and should go well here. Charles Leclerc really likes the place. Had his scrapes here, but generally super quick, and it's going to be interesting to see Ferrari as a whole's progress as well.
Yeah, 3 poles on the bounce here for Charles Leclerc. Let's hear from him now.
Charles, there's 3 tracks on the calendar where you have 3 poles, Spa, Monaco and here. You converted the other 2 now. What are the chances this weekend, coming off the back of the Monza win, that you can convert and get the Baku win finally?
Well, I really hope so. I mean, we've been pretty strong in qualifying in the past here. In the past 3 years, I think we were on pole position. However, on the Sunday, we always struggle with tyre management. This year, tyre management is actually one of our strengths. So I hope that doesn't mean we'll struggle on the Saturday, but I would expect quite a good weekend for us. That probably, we don't expect us to be at the level of the McLaren or the Red Bull, but closer than what we've seen in the last few races if you take off Monza. So, yeah, Target will try and have a better Sunday than the previous years.
Look at the emotion here. It was such a special day for Ferrari, and one that came from boldly going for that one stop as well. There's a big old straight here. They're very fast on the straights in Monza. We'll see if they can replicate the same here in Baku. We'll move to McLaren because they started that race P1, P2. They came out of lap 1, P1 and P3. They ultimately secured a P2 and P3. And papaya rules have now come to light. And what exactly they are and how the team are going to manage ambitions moving forward, Alex. How do you see it all?
Well, the papaya rules appear to broadly conform to the sporting regulations. Don't hit each other, race hard. What I think you can see here are the personnel in the team conflicting and almost running head-on towards the mathematical reality that Lando Norris is capable of winning this World Championship if everything goes well. Zach likes to run a harmonious team, and Oscar Piastri, with that overtake, potentially, maybe giving a little bit of a challenge towards that harmony. You've also got Andrea Stella in the mix, the performance engineer for Michael Schumacher. The last time big team orders discussion came up in the early 2000s, of course. So they've all got their bit of baggage to bring to this discussion, that colliding with the reality that they need to try to snatch this championship if they can. They've said this week that they will bias towards Lando Norris. Now, what does that mean? You'd have to be within the team really to understand exactly what it means. What they've not done is made any hard and fast commitments in terms of how the cars will be exactly run that appear to bias Lando.
No, and when I spoke to Andrea Stella earlier, he made very clear they have 2 number 1 drivers. In a 50-50 scenario, the bias will be towards Lando Norris because he is 62 points behind Max Verstappen. And if we take a look at the calendar now, you will see we have 232 points still available this season. Yes, that's 8 races, but 3 of these races coming up are sprint weekends. So we head to Singapore next up, then we have Austin, USA, that's a sprint weekend, on to Mexico and Brazil, another sprint weekend. We've got that triple leading on to another triple. That's Vegas, Qatar and Abu Dhabi. Qatar, our final sprint weekend of the season. So mathematically, now the reality is Lando Norris has to outperform Max Verstappen by around 8 points every weekend to claim the World Drivers' title. The Constructor title is still very much the team's first and foremost priority. In speaking to Andrea Stella, that was very much the case. If they win both, they want it to be done with the McLaren values and principles at heart. That was something that was incredibly clear when I spoke to him, and you'll see this interview we've done in our pre-race show on Sunday as well. But how does prioritising a driver look when races are incredibly hard to predict sometimes, and when you've got 2 ambitious drivers, 2 egos to manage?
That's the reality, isn't it? They've said what they've said. They've made clear they're going to stand behind Lando Norris. As Lando now, I'd be looking at, okay, show me the run plan then. Where am I being prioritised? Show me the parts list. Where's my toe, for example, throughout the qualifying session? It's going to be so interesting to see how much of that priority actually makes its way over there, where the magic happens on the racetrack, and that's where the truth of the situation will pan out. I think we'll see a movement towards Lando Norris, that's for sure. How far they'll move, well, that'll be down to the happenings and what plays out on track.
Interestingly, Andrea Stella really emphasising to me that Oscar Piastri was happy to be in support of the team's ambitions, and knowing that 2 drivers at the top of their game will equal the constructor standings, and if it means one's on the driver's top step as well, great stuff. Lando Norris, though, saying he doesn't just want to win this by being gifted it by a teammate. He wants to win it outright on track, not making mistakes, not losing off the start.
Yeah, and I think that's in the sporting mentality of both drivers, and I commend them for that. You know, Oscar Piastri knows as well that these racing teams make 1,000 decisions a weekend that affect the driver's performance. The reality is they're running the train set. They're running the car, and you need the team behind you and on side. So whether these things are contractual, whether they're not contractual, or whatever it is playing out, eventually you have to have the team with you, and Piastri knows that a little bit of give and take might be required at this stage of this championship. To do that, he's got a long career ahead of him with the way he's performing, and it could hinge upon how cooperative he is.
And Andrea pointed that out to me. He said, look, he didn't say it in the interview, but he wanted me to emphasise it when we did speak about it, to say that we aren't just looking at this year and winning titles this year. We want to win titles next year and the year after that. And to do that, you need a harmonious team, and you need a team that has unity moving forwards as well. I think that's something they are very keen to emphasise and to keep within those papaya rules, those team principles, those team values that we're talking about so far. We're talking about Lance versus Oscar. We're forgetting one very big factor, and that's Max Verstappen, because I cannot imagine for 1 second he will be content with the position that he finished in last week. He'll be content with finishing 8 points behind Lando Norris, or indeed for the biggest lead in a driver's standings to be overturned.
Max has been routinely asking the team to have a look at things weekend after weekend now. They don't appear to have a good low downforce package. He doesn't appear to have the balance that he's looking for. And so they'll need to try and find something here and address what is now looking like, or at least last weekend looked like, the third fastest car in Formula One.
Yeah, it really is, and what a turnaround that is. And Mercedes themselves are in the mix as well, just behind the likes of Ferrari, McLaren, potentially Red Bull at the moment, but they are looking to maximise as much as they can from this weekend. And look, if you look at qualifying last time out, it is unbelievably tight. That was the tightest result we had. 6 drivers within 2/10 of each other. George Russell's been talking about that with Greg Stewart.
Because Mercedes went into the summer break with such a head of steam after that series of wins. It's been harder since then, but do you think it's just, if you put it all together, you can be back in that fight with McLaren and
Absolutely.
Ferrari? Yeah?
I don't think there's a lot that can make you fall down the order. In previous years gone by, if you nailed a weekend and you, let's say, overachieved by a 10th or 2 of your performance, it didn't change the result. Whereas now, if you overachieve by a 10th or 2, you win the race, and if you underachieve by a 10th or 2, you finish P7 or P8. And that's how the sport is, so it's a matter of fine margins, and we just got to ensure that we're on top of our game to try and stay at the front of that field.
And we've made our way down a very busy pit lane. There's a VIP walk happening right now, so fans delighted to get a glimpse of the man next to me here. Yes, Alex Brundle, but also Fred Vesti. Fred, welcome along. Thanks so much for joining us. Mercedes then, this weekend. Toto's saying there are challenges that lie ahead. You're learning and implementing lessons out there. What does that mean? How does that translate to the track?
Yeah, I mean, obviously all season is a lot of learning. The whole team is working really hard to continue to improve. There's been some good races this year so far with race wins, but Mercedes is not yet where we want to be. So everyone in the team is really pushing as hard as possible to get there, and that is fighting for a championship, fighting for wins every single weekend. At the moment, if the car is right and everything is great, Mercedes can win a race, but we want to be there every single weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. Alex?
Fred, you seem to be really strong. Early on in the weekend, we saw Hamilton top Friday in Monza. Do you think that progress through the weekend is what's missing at the moment? Because then, as you move into the points-paying sessions, into the Grand Prix, the pace is not still there for you at this stage of the year, or is it something else?
Well, you can argue that, or you can say we're good at starting the car in the right window. It's another thing. Obviously, a lot of sim work is going on prior to the weekend.
By you?
I'm driving, other people are driving as well, but also offline sims, working out the best setup. So maybe Mercedes is good at that, but there is no doubt there is more improvements to come from the team this year, but also looking into the future. And hopefully that will mean more points on Sunday.
And Fred, it's another hot weekend here. We had an absolute scorcher in Monza, and many saying that the Mercedes would really struggle in terms of those tyre temperatures, in terms of the tyre deg as well. How do you foresee the Mercedes reacting, behaving on a circuit like this, where car balance and setup and the compromise between low downforce but grip on those twisty sections is so important?
Yeah, I think for Mercedes it's really important to work each session step by step throughout all the test items they have, and just understanding the tires and the setup, because this track is quite difficult. You want to have the downforce like Monaco, but the top speed of Monza, and then it's really to prioritize how you make your car up for the weekend. So they need to learn throughout the sessions, and hopefully it will be a strong weekend for Mercedes.
That's one of the reasons I absolutely love this track and this race, because it's just fascinating how it plays out and how different teams will react. And I love watching the cars around this track. What do you like personally about coming here? Because I know you like the track, but what do you like about the city as well and the weekend we have ahead?
Yeah, so like personally I love Baku because it's a street track, so you get the thrill of racing up against the walls. Any mistake will put you in the wall, which I think any driver loves. It's really exciting. But equally you can overtake. A track like Monaco, you have the tight hairpins, it's difficult to overtake, which makes Monaco in the race on Sunday a bit tricky for the drivers. But here in Baku, I think it's one of the best tracks for overtaking for the whole year, and the top speed is very high as well. So slipstreaming down to turn 1 is really crucial.
You racing drivers are a different breed. Loving the chance that any mistake will be punished by being in the wall. I mean, it's good fun for us to watch, but I don't know how you guys do it. Fred, thank you so much for joining us on Weekend Warm Up. Absolute pleasure. Kevin Magnussen will miss. He won't be enjoying any of the fun that Fred Vesti's just talked about. He's missing this race due to picking up 2 more penalty points in Monza, taking his total to 12 for the season. That means he has a race ban. Ollie Behrman, once again, is stepping in. Let's hear from him.
And tell us about Baku. You have a tremendous record here, having won both Formula 2 races here last year. It's a tricky track, but one that you go very well at. Are you excited to be making your first full Grand Prix appearance at this racetrack?
Yeah, like you said, last year went pretty well. And yeah, I was excited to come here in F2. And of course, to make the step to F1 for this weekend is a great experience. I'm really looking forward to it. I got a lot of confidence at this track last year. From the outside, it was a very clean weekend. On the inside, I hit the wall every single session, so I'm going to be trying to tone that down a little bit. And yeah, just have a clean weekend and enjoy it as well.
Is that the goal, just have a clean weekend and enjoy it, and what will be, will be?
Yeah, exactly. I just want to build up step by step because we have time to do that. In F2, you have to be straight on the pace, take a lot of risk. With just one session, we have 3 of them this weekend. So I just want to maximize myself and gain experience. It's going to be the most sessions I've done in F1 in a single time. I've never done an FP2 session before. I've done all the others, but not FP2. So yeah, it'll just be a case of building it up, and enjoyment is coming anyway. So yeah.
Well, his first full Grand Prix weekend. What an opportunity, what an occasion for Ollie Behrman. His Haas debut as well, ahead of a full-time role, of course, next season. We mentioned Ollie Behrman going well here in Baku. What I found hilarious in that is that he said, well, I was in the wall every single session.
One of the best qualifying laps I've ever seen in Formula 2 is Ollie Behrman knocking the tracking out and then continuing and setting pole but behind the wheel of a Formula 2 car. He's always been brilliant around these sort of barnstormer racetracks, a lot of confidence behind the wheel. Oliver Behrman, sometimes pushing to the absolute limit, to his slight detriment, but he's super quick around here. Can't wait to see what he can do. Another opportunity as well for him to get more Formula 1 experience, critical Formula 1 experience, with testing so limited before he moves and jumps in the Haas next year.
Do you remember his dad in Saudi Arabia, in Jeddah, when he stepped in, his face in the Ferrari garage? What is he going to be like now that he's jumped into the car he's driving next season on a racetrack like this where he's already over the limit?
Let's see if he's got prepared and chilled out, or if he rocks up in the back of the garage. He's like that for every Formula 2 race, by the way. It wasn't just a debut thing, but it's great to see that relationship, and great to see him back behind the wheel of a Formula 1 car.
Yeah, great to see so many fans down here basking in the sunshine here in this pit lane. We're talking about Ollie Behrman's first full race weekend in Formula 1. Of course, he stepped in midway through the Saudi Arabian race weekend. Franco Colapinto then, fresh from Monza, P12 for him, and a race really well managed. He now comes to Baku. How much of a challenge will this be?
His debut in Monza reminded me a little bit of Nick de Vries' debut, to be honest, where they go to home base. Monza, it's a racetrack they know. There are 6 corners, realistically, to get your head around. Then you turn up here. Franco Colapinto's never raced here before. What I will say, though, is he did an absolutely brilliant job in Monza. At times through his stints, it was on pace with Alexander Albon. Albon held up a little bit in traffic, but Colapinto was right there. A tiny bit more degradation than Alexander Albon, but built up to it, did the job. This will be a new challenge. And yeah, the Space Invaders are going to be coming at him a little bit faster around Baku, aren't they? But it's going to be interesting to see how he gets on.
There's still really nothing to lose, though, for Franco Colapinto, except I think there is an expectation that Williams will go well here. Alex Albon saying there's a positive momentum within the team right now. How much pressure does that heap on a young driver, knowing that there is potentially a point-scoring car beneath them?
Yeah, so they're on a par with Aston Martin last time out, looking like they could challenge for points. It's going to be interesting to see what Colapinto's plan is, and I think that's going to emerge through the year. You've obviously got Carlos Sainz heading towards that Williams seat, so door closed there. He must have a strategy, an angle, beyond just delivering the best possible performance he can in the car, and it's going to be interesting to see that emerge.
Of course, we're talking about Franco Colapinto, and if you did miss the Monza weekend and indeed the news, that's because Logan Sargent was replaced by the Argentinian driver, and we wish Logan all the very best as well. In terms of what that means for F1 fantasy, well, he's now an inactive driver, and there's been a big rule change heading into this weekend as well. All drivers, whether active or not, will now be subject to penalty points for being not classified in qualifying, sprint or race sessions. That means that anyone with Logan Sargent or indeed, Kevin Magnussen as well, within their teams will have to swap them out.
After brutal campaigning.
I've not campaigned for this.
From Laura Winter, brutal campaigning.
I wondered if anyone was going to throw me under the bus on this one. I just felt it was within the spirit of the rules that everyone had
Winter rules.
The rules of F1 fantasy, and, the team have acted on this, so players should use transfers, unfortunately, to remove Logan Sargent and Kevin Magnussen. Those who've kept Ollie Behrman in, apparently 1% of all teams have still got Ollie Behrman in there. He's now active again, so he can stay in.
I must admit, when I don't touch my team, they seem to do better. So
have you got Ollie Behrman in still?
No. Brundle's burnouts have had a tragic dive in form. But I've managed to get Ollie Behrman out of the lineup. I'll have to put him in for this weekend.
Yeah, you should do. And look, you can still use a wild card or limitless chips as well to avoid any penalties for those transfers. Okay, from F1 Fantasy to Sauber, and the seats that is still available there, of course. We've got Nico Hülkenberg heading there. Who are you hearing? Who do you think will be in that second Sauber seat? Because that one and V-Carbs are two that still need filling.
You've got several connected drivers, haven't you there? Théo Pourchaire is the one that jumps to mind. You've got Zane Maloney doing a good job behind the wheel of a Formula 2 car. I would love to see a young driver get an opportunity in what is a crossover year for Sauber until it becomes Audi in 2026. So it would be great to see one of those young guns I've watched race in the Formula 2 Championship get a chance.
Yeah, Bortoletto's been in the mix as well. I was hearing rumours of Schwartzman because of Matteo Binotto perhaps going back to the team, but I'm not hearing too much of that now. There's plenty of names swirling around, but Bottas, apparently, according to Greg Stewart, who did our interviews in the pen earlier on, seems very confident that that seat will be his.
It's an interesting one for an older driver, isn't it, with where that team is going. Matteo Binotto being really clear about just how long it's going to take, though, for them to be up at the sharp end of the grid. It's either a youngster finding their way in that crossover year and taking opportunity, much in the way Colapinto has, or you will get a very established driver on a year deal with a hook in to the next stage, probably approved by Audi to then take that team into its next generation.
What about that V-Carb seat?
V-Carb seat,
Lawson,
still
Ricciardo.
wide open. Hadjar still doing an amazing job behind the wheel of a Formula 2 car. Again, very much open at this stage. We've got a lot of racing to go in the Formula 2 Championship. Formula 3 over, and it's easy to think feeder series are left in the dust as we travel around the world. Not so for Formula 2. A lot of flyaways for these young drivers to prove themselves, open for all Red Bull connected youngsters, I think.
Yeah, there is still a bit of the silly season left. I know you'll be across all the F2 action this weekend and F1, very much earning your paycheck for this weekend. We're keeping you very busy. Let's take a look then at how that weekend is scheduled, and here's how it all lines up here in beautiful Baku. We, of course, have a normal weekend ahead of us, albeit not a sprint weekend. 3 of those coming up soon, though. 1:15 for FP1. 4:45 building up to FP2, 12:15 on air building up to FP3. Pre-qualifying show, that starts at 3:30 for a 4 p.m. hour of qualifying. And then Sunday, we have a 2 p.m. start for our pre-race show. 51 laps of this 6-kilometre circuit. And of course, your post-race show immediately after the checkered flag, the race starting at 3 p.m. Okay, final thoughts, predictions, please.
Super fast in a straight line Ferrari. I have Leclerc from Norris from Sainz. Leclerc on pole.
Leclerc on pole, and Leclerc to convert that pole to a win.
Correct.
Wow. I am going to say we will see... I am thinking it's going to be a McLaren win. I think they will have learned some lessons from the last few races. They have unbelievable speed. I think they'll have sorted some of the strategical challenges they've experienced over the last few weekends as well. I'm going to agree with your podium, but I'm going to say it's a Lando Norris win. Charles Leclerc, Oscar Piastri, maybe. But who knows? Thank you very much, Alex Brundle. Looking forward to all of your insights throughout the course of the weekend. Big thanks to Fred Vesti for joining us and to Greg Stewart for asking all the important questions in the media pen today as well. That's it from Weekend Warm-Up. We'll see you tomorrow for Free Practice Friday from all of us in Baku. See you soon.
This is a showdown. It's going to be a good one.
This is Azerbaijan.
Everybody ready? Let's go! We're underway!
Look how close they are for the lead.
Back on the streets.
Oh my word, he's done it! What a move that is! Sensational stuff. That was wild. Oh, the crowd loved that.